the University of Colorado, located in the People's Republic of Boulder. Somebody asked me the other day why the University of Colorado isn't winning in football anymore, and I said it's pretty damn simple. They don't cheat anymore. I was in Barry Flinchbaugh's first ag policy class at K-State, and I looked at the class guide for ag econ courses, and it said agriculture policy, Dr. B.L. Flinchbaugh. Looked interesting. So I asked one of my fraternity brothers, I said, you know this professor? And he said, I've heard he's some guy from Pennsylvania Dutchman, just moved here, is going to teach the course. And I said, well, what's the course about? And he said, I don't know. And I said, well, it is about how to grow tulips in Holland? And he said, no. So I took a chance and I took the course. I was ready for some cruel and unusual punishment. The first day that Dr. Flinchbaugh walked into the classroom, I'd never seen anybody quite walk like that, as Jay so well demonstrated tonight. I called it, and the students called it, the Flinchbaugh strut. You know, there's only one place you could learn the Flinchbaugh strut. Back in Pennsylvania, he must have had a bunch of roosters on the farm. He must have sat there and watched those roosters for hours and hours on end and practiced. And practiced. After a few classes one day, he announced that he was looking for a driver. If anyone was interested, they should come see him after class. So that sounded interesting to me. So after class, I talked to him, and he said, show up at Waters Hall tomorrow afternoon at 3 o'clock. We're going to go to Garnett to a county extension meeting. So I showed up at Waters Hall at 3 o'clock, and he threw the keys at me, and he said, go get this green Chrysler out of the parking lot, and I'll meet you out the back door of Waters Hall in 5 minutes. I asked him, I said, am I going to get paid for this? He said, yeah. And as I look back now, you know, it seems kind of odd for an ag policy university professor to have a paid chauffeur. When all I've ever heard from Kansas State University for the last 40 years is we never have any damn money. Well, we spent the next 2 years traveling the back roads of Kansas, and I would drive him to a county extension meeting, and I'd sit in the back of the room, and he would do his thing, stir up the crowd. A few nights I didn't think we were going to get out alive, to be honest with you, but I had the car running a couple of times. He'd kind of look at me and give me that wink, go get the car, Kendall. Sometimes we'd talk, sometimes he'd sleep. In fact, I'm probably one of the few people in the world that know more about his sleep habits, know just about as much about his sleep habits as his wife, Kathy. And that's as far as I'm going to go with that. Now, Barry has a cabin near Fort Collins, and he and I have spent many nights talking politics, sports, K-State, many late nights. Invariably, our conversations involve politics, and you know, Barry's tell-it-like-it-is style will occasionally mix a little colorful language and sexual humor into the conversation. And I've wondered, you know, here he is on the downside of his career. He would be a perfect candidate to be one of Hillary's ag policy advisors. Now, on a more serious note, when I did live in Kansas, I traveled this state, as many of you in this room have, from Hiawatha to Liberal, from Goodland to Coffeyville. And as I traveled this state, I was stunned, and I'm stunned, always stunned, by the magnificent natural resources that God gave Kansas agriculture. But you know, that's only one part of the equation in Kansas agriculture. Those natural resources are really nothing if there's not someone there to nourish them and develop them and make them the vibrant agriculture economy that Kansas is. And Kansas State University is the provider of human agriculture capital and resources. And all these years, through his teaching and leadership, Barry has been one of the most important developers of human resources in the state of Kansas. And for that, we all owe him a debt of gratitude. As a young man, one day, I was riding in a pickup with my father north of Winfield on a dusty dirt road. And I was thinking about running for president of my local FFA chapter. And I asked my father, who was a man of wisdom, what makes a good leader? And he kind of shuffled in his overalls and tugged his cap, looked out the window of the pickup. And then he looked over at me and he said, "Kendall, the real test of great leaders is three things. Do they have integrity? Do they have character? And do they care about me and have my interest at heart?" Well, Barry clearly fits my father's simple definition of a leader. And Barry, your leadership and contributions to Kansas agriculture is something that you should be very, very proud of. Thank you.
Well put, Kendall. Thank you very much. Now we'd ask a Carl board member and a member Class 6 of Carl, who made it all the way in from the greater Metro Gove area to take in this proceedings, Mark Coberly. See, there he is, right there.
God, I've waited a long time to do this. I am Mark Coberly from Gove, Kansas, hub city of tourism and industry of western Kansas. For those of you who don't get out much, that's about 60 miles west of Hayes. I was going to bring the other guy from Gove with me, but he decided to stay home and turn out the lights. I'm the guy you've been looking for. I'm the last of the Mohegans here, so you're over the hump, or very close to it. Having to follow a distinguished panel of speakers like this with politicians, et cetera, I feel a little bit like Larry the Cable Guy on Foxworthy. But I taught Barry everything he knows about chewing those cigars. And I think that's possibly the only good habit he's still got. I was a graduate of Carl 6, Class 6, and I'm currently on the board as a Class 6 rep. I have been for a number of years. When I was at the last board meeting, Jack condescended to inform me that I was going to speak at this event. And I was naive enough to ask him, well, when am I going to speak on this schedule? He says, oh, you know, we kind of have to schedule these people, dignitaries, et cetera, in the hierarchy of their political importance. He said, this being the case, we've got you about a 5-minute slot about 30 minutes after the event's over. As a board, Carl board, we've known Barry long enough and had to deal with him long enough that we know he isn't quite right. But we've tried to kind of overlook some of his little idiosyncrasies, you might say. And you know, he is an economist by trade, which kind of speaks for itself. You know what they say about economists. If you line all the world's economists up end to end, they wouldn't reach a decision. Having this event here in Wichita, in the air capital of the world, kind of reminds me of all the years, 40 years that I've been a pilot. Somebody said, yeah, you can pilot higher and deeper than anybody they've ever seen. As such, I keep track a little bit of the Reno air races. Every year they gather in Reno, Nevada, and have a big air race. And the culminating event is the unlimited segment where you just build the fastest damn airplane you can. No limits. And it is predominantly made up of ex-World War II fighter planes, and they've souped these things up. And there's one old plane, the old Grumman Bearcat, that just perennially wins this thing. And they gave it the name the Rare Bear. And every time I hear that airplane, I think of Barry Flinchbaugh. The Rare Bear. And you know, his idea of raising money for Carl by inviting people from all over the country to get up and make fun of him, that's pretty rare air even for the Rare Bear. I would have liked to have been a mouse in the closet when Barry broached this to these two children here. Put yourself in this position for a moment. Junior, there's Barry. What would you think about coming to Wichita about the 16th of November and listening to people get up from all over the country and make fun of me? Oh, yeah, Dad. That's good. That works for me. I can see this. I would like to have been there. Well, being a diligent student, I crammed 4 years into 5.5 at K-State, graduating with a BS in Ag Econ and a PhD in Chytology. For those of you who are not from K-State and are not familiar with their program, that's a special program they had going in those days where you could skip the master's and go straight on to Chytology and get your PhD, which I excelled at. And fortunately, I graduated, or they let me go, or whatever happened, in 1971, 1 year before the Rare Bear arrived on the scene. Well, my two sons came along a few years later, these two gentlemen right here, and they weren't quite as lucky as the old man. They both, being chips off the old block, went through Ag Econ and were subjected to Barry's class. Now, in one short semester, this guy managed to undo 21 years of hard work by their mother and I, for which I will never forgive him. And the kicker is I paid him to do it. Well, the good news is it's not all bad. Doctors tell me that with 6 more months of therapy, the younger one will be okay. Now, Barry, possibly none of you know this, but they mentioned that he was a closet Jayhawk, but he's a closet greenie. And as such, he decided to purchase a cabin in the mountains in Colorado to go commune with the birds and the bears and the bees and whatever else they have out there to commune with. And this cabin is a 2-story affair, pretty tall cabin with a beautiful deck on the upper story, probably 20, 30 feet up in the air. Well, one weekend, Barry was out there by himself to get a little peace and solitude. So he ventures out on his deck for his cigar and his toddy and to commune with the bears. And the door to the deck closes and locks from the inside. Not a good deal. Well, being a Boy Scout that he is, he's always prepared. After a moment of panic, nobody there, no cell phones, he ascertains that the only way he's going to survive this is there's one lone pine tree growing up next to the deck with a branch that reached out far enough that he could crawl out on this branch, get to the tree trunk in his lounging shorts, and shinny down the trunk. Now, the word on the street was, the gossip that I hear later was that Mama Flinchbaugh was safe for about 3 weeks after this excursion. Each year, Carl has a fundraiser at Flint Oak, which I'm sure some of you are familiar with. We're here by Fall River. And for those of you who like to shoot, I would highly recommend this place. This is a class act. It's a beautiful place to shoot. So each year we sponsor this fundraiser, and we're divided into teams of 4 guys, 4 people. And the first couple of years, Barry was assigned to my team. I'm not sure who was doing the assigning. I think I'll find out. So we line up at the first stand, and Barry gets up to the shooting position. He gets this kind of an Elmer Fudd look. Speaking, it kind of looks like Elmer Fudd, reminds me. So, as soon as he's set, I've got the button in my hand. I'm pushing the button. He says, "Pull!" I hit the button, and the 3 of us back there cringing, waiting for the report. The clay pigeon sails across, wafting across. We're waiting, waiting. Elmer's looking around. Well, he says, "Overly, damn it, I said pull!" Well, that was when any thoughts I had of our team placing in the possible top 3 just kind of wafted off into the Neverland. At the last board meeting, when Jack informed me that I was to speak at this event, he said that Carl would provide my meal, my ticket to the reception. If there are any clergy in this group, you need to sit up and take note right now. Now, considering who the roastee is, any clergy in this group, that's a long shot. But anyway, between the fact that I managed to graduate 1 year before he arrived on the scene at K-State and the fact that Carl is essentially willing to pay me to stand up here before a group of people and publicly make fun of him and ridicule him, has got to be lead pipe proof that there is a magnanimous and benevolent God. Well, on behalf of the Carl Board and all of us associated with Carl, we've given a lot of thanks to Barry tonight, deservingly. But we don't want to overlook the people that are here. You folks are the one that made this possible and made this thing a success. And we want you to know how much the Carl Board and the people associated with Carl appreciate your participation, your willingness to give in the past, tonight, and hopefully in the future. And we just want you to know that we appreciate everything that you have done to make this thing a success for us and for Barry. So thank you from the bottom of our hearts. And Barry, God bless.
Thank you, Mark. Well done. Now, you can't have a roast. And the word's not can't, it's can't have a roast without hearing from the offspring. And they're here with us on the dais. James is a very successful veterinarian in the Oklahoma City area. And Kate is currently a very successful law student at the University of Vermont. I've always been a believer that standout young people like these are an obvious and a direct product of high caliber parenting. So, Kathy, congratulations. And she doesn't want me to do this, but the most tolerant woman on this or any other planet is Kathy Flinchbaugh. Would you please stand? Having some brief insight into what James might be doing, this is going to be very entertaining. I would introduce now Dr. James Flinchbaugh.
Well, we've had some wonderful speakers tonight, and I hope I can live up to the entertainment value that we've heard of tonight. When they discussed me coming and having a little fun at Dad, they asked me if I would be comfortable insulting Dad in a formal setting. And I thought, well, you know, I've been doing it informally for years, so I didn't think the transition would be all that difficult. They also told me I was going to be limited to about 5 minutes, and that I had to say some positive things about him as well. And I thought, what an opportunity cost to waste this time on positive comments of my old man. That's an economic term from Econ 101, as I recall. So I thought, how do I sum up the wealth of material in 5 minutes to kind of give a perspective on the life of my father? And I was thinking through stories and coming up with kind of a theme, and there was a common thread, so to speak. And anybody who's probably been out to Dad's cabin will be familiar with this. So I decided to do kind of a history of Dad's underwear. Now, I've noticed different people wearing Dad's clothing tonight, and I thought that would be a little extreme, so I will not be wearing Dad's underwear tonight. So one of my earliest memories of Dad's underwear occurred while we were fishing at a lake in Colorado. I was around 8 or so, and my brother and I were fishing on this pier that kind of went out into the lake. And Dad was somewhere attempting to fish further down the bank. And I'm reminded of a line of one of my favorite comedians, Stephen Wright, who said there's a fine line between fishing and sitting on the bank like an idiot. And that was never more true than that day. At that point in time, I had a prized possession. I had a Mickey Mouse fishing pole. And I loved this Mickey Mouse fishing pole. And David and I are sitting there on the pier, and through, I'm sure, no fault of my own, I ended up in the water. And we had always had swimming lessons throughout our lives, and so I was comfortably treading water, contemplating the loss of this Mickey Mouse fishing pole, and wondering, well, how should I extract myself from this situation? When I hear this commotion on the bank. And so I'm sitting here, and I hear women screaming, dogs whining, children fainting. And I look down and I see Dad streaking down the bank. And by streaking, I don't mean moving rapidly. Dad's cutoff shorts are around his ankles. He's got one hand trying to keep his dignity intact. And he's got a button-down shirt that's open and flapping in the breeze. Now I am in danger. Never in my swimming lessons had this particular occurrence come up. How do you laugh hysterically as your father is embarrassing everyone in the state of Colorado running down the lake? And to add insult to injury, he refused to dive into the lake and retrieve my fishing pole. I still miss that fishing pole. And oh, by the way, I did bring props. Now, Mom said he missed his shirts, but he didn't miss his underwear. As I recall, they look something like this. Now, this wasn't the actual pair of underwear. I didn't have any rubber gloves with me, so I didn't bring the actual pair of underwear. That's a pretty good representation. So my next recurrence of Dad's underwear was this particular pair, and this is an actual pair of Dad's underwear. You can notice the immaculate condition that they are in. So we are at my grandparents' house in Pennsylvania, and we're playing badminton in the backyard. Dad's not. Dad is multitasking at this point in time. He's always trying to do multiple things. At this point in time, that involved reading a book, smoking a cigar, and sleeping all at the same time. Now, numerous times I had seen him accomplish two of these activities simultaneously. The third was just a little beyond his grasp. Two of these activities went real well together. Unfortunately, the smoking of the cigar did not. This may be why he no longer smokes these cigars. So David and I are playing badminton, and we notice an unusual amount of activity. Now, Dad has never been described as an athlete with good burst speed. However, he did manage a burst at this point in time. The cigar and the underwear came in close contact with predictable results. Now, stop, drop, and roll did not occur to Dad. However, scream, hop, and curse did. After the fire was put out, Dad reported that there was no significant structural damage. And Mom said that, well, since there were no significant structures involved, that was going to be an impossibility. The last episode that I clearly remember of Dad's underwear was one of the more public displays. So we are in Colorado again at the Broadmoor Hotel. Now, never let it be said that Dad would take on airs or try to show off. As a matter of fact, we would never have been near the Broadmoor Hotel if he would have been paying the bill. Dad was very concerned that people would think him arrogant going to the Broadmoor Hotel, and so he specifically designed an outfit to look unassuming and humble. This involved another pair of old ratty cutoff shorts, a Cuban pullover shirt, $2 Walmart sandals. The best part of this outfit, the masterpiece of this outfit was underwear that were 2 inches longer than the cutoff shorts. I assure you that no one in the hotel was in danger of thinking they were in the presence of a better. In fact, two people offered Dad $1 to clean their windshield. Now, we all know Dad has lost weight, and we're all very proud of that. He's been exercising and is in slim and trim. The only downside that I've seen to it is new, unfortunate... choice of underwear. I did wash these like 5 times before I brought them here. Here you go, Dad. Second drawer down, I believe. Well, in all seriousness, Dad has been a great inspiration. He has always shown that hard work, dedication, honesty are keys to success. You can always hold your head up high when you know you've attempted to do the right thing, regardless of whether in the short run it seemed to be the right thing or not. I appreciate all his values and time and effort that he put into me and my sister Katie. I'm sure you'll agree that Katie got the wealth of that. But fortunately, we are proud and privileged to have been a member of this family. And I want to express my sincere appreciation for all you've done for me.
Thank you, James. Kate, now it's your turn, and I assume you'll be a lot easier on the old man since you and he are in lockstep politically. Soon-to-be barrister Kate Flinchbaugh.
Wow. There's been a lot of ass kissing this evening, people. Oh, sorry. Didn't want to talk too loud. Okay, so when I was asked to participate, I thought about making fun of politics or agriculture or economics or something like that. And then I thought, no, that there were people better suited to talk about that stuff. And that I should really talk about things that are personal and personal to our family. And unfortunately, because he's the way he is, no matter the setting, the Broadmoor is a good example, not that I was there, none of my insights will come as a surprise, but I hope they might cause a few chuckles. And I'm not very creative, so I stole a concept from late night television, the top 10 list. So tonight's top 10 list is 10 things everyone should know about my dad. Number 10, he is the only person I've ever met who actually wants to walk with a cane. He doesn't need it, but he walks with it anyway. And it's important to note that he's worked it seamlessly into his little routine. He's got the cigar, the goofy head of white hair, the all-purple ensemble, and now the cane to highlight the laugh. I think one of these days my mom is going to take it away from him, but for this point, he's going to walk around with it. Number 9, he is the only person I know who loves the state of Colorado so much that he would stay there when his youngest child was moving to Vermont to go to school. And it was me. I'd spent 22 years in Manhattan. I moved to Vermont, and he doesn't come home. Number 8, he is the only person I know who needs to move the seat closer to the steering wheel when I was the last person to use the car. That's right, I've got longer legs. Number 7, and I'm going to stick with the car thing for a moment. He is the only person I know who is committed to easing our dependence on foreign oil, and I'm sure most of you know, but in case you don't, he's a member of a group called 25 by 25, which this group, by the year 2025, wants to see 25% of our energy needs being met by renewable fuels. So he's the only person I know who is committed to easing our dependence on foreign oil, who also drives a gas-guzzling SUV around Manhattan, Kansas. Now, he says it's for Colorado, and we know how much he likes Colorado, but come on. Number 6, he's the only person I know who asks me what is going on at a K-State football game. And I might surprise you, but it's not a good sign. Number 5, still with K-State football. He's the only person I know, actually no, he's the only person in the stands at a K-State football game who can't clap in unison with the rest of the stadium. Now, not being able to clap to music alone, I can kind of understand because that takes a little bit of skill. But to not even be able to copy the person standing beside you is bad. Let's just face it. Number 4, he's the only person I know who cries more than I do. And I cry a lot. I'm going to be a lawyer. And sometimes the cane's involved. You've seen it earlier. He's already cried. Hopefully there will be no crying tomorrow. Go Cats. I bleed purple like the rest of the family. Number 3, he's the only person I know who, when visiting a state, first looks for the presidential library. He has some sort of special radar, and in fact, when we were driving down here today, he was telling me about the Clinton Library. Anyway, he loves history. Number 2, he's the only adult I know who likes Christmas presents more than children. And this is a quick story, but one year my mother and I thought it would be funny to rewrap some books that we'd given him on a previous holiday, and all he asked for is books, so he gets a lot of them. So we wrap them up and we put them under the tree, and he unwraps them, and he's trying to be polite about it, but you can tell that something's the matter. And sure enough, there was a little tear. And finally, my number 1 is he's the only person I know who started going to Aggieville at age 65. And I'm not going to say anything nice because I think that's been done. But no, anyway, I love you, Dad, and I love you, Mom, and I hope I was appropriate. That was the rule. And now I think he gets to talk, so we'll all have to listen.
Thank you, Kate and James. Before we get to the crescendo here, I'm asked to thank our courtesy staff, which was coordinated by Sherry Roski. Is that correct? I'm sorry, Reese. I'm sorry, Sherry from U.S. Ag Bank. We'd like to thank those folks. Give them a hand, if you would, please. You have been remarkably restrained. Unfortunately, the rental time on this room is up, so good night. Well, he's been well behaved, but that will be exhausted shortly. So without any further ado, let's welcome the man of the hour, Dr. Barry Flinchbaugh.
We've set a record tonight. There's more damn lies been told tonight than any time in the history of Kansas. Well, you've all had great fun tonight at my expense. But I'm an economist. And I have the last laugh. Because we picked your wallet. And this has been so much fun, I think we'll make it an annual occasion. We picked your wallet for a great cause that's near and dear to my heart. Carl. It's a real privilege for me to announce that we've raised somewhere in the neighborhood of $85,000. I'm grateful to all my politician friends, Kathleen, Sam, Pat, Dan, Jerry, and Adrian, and my good friend Pat Roberts really doesn't need to worry about re-election because he can go to Hollywood with Dan and make a hell of a lot more money than he's making now. I have to tell you my favorite Pat Roberts story, and it is a true story. Back when we were debating the 1985 Farm Bill, they brought some Hollywood folks to Washington to testify before the House Ag Committee, and Jane Fonda was among them. And during her testimony, he had had enough, and he stormed out. As he got into the hall, the news reporter stuck a microphone under his nose and said, "Well, what did you think of Miss Fonda's testimony?" And he said, live on the air, "She doesn't know a damn thing about agriculture, but she can exercise with me anytime." Contrary to most of what you heard tonight, that's a true story. When I saw him, I said, "Pat, that didn't play in Peoria." You know, the old political saying. He said, "But it sure played in Dodge City." You notice this list of names. And yes, I'm privileged to call them all by their first name. And Jerry Miranda's not here because they're in session. And he could be in deep trouble as a politician because he's lost his voice and couldn't even make a DVD because of that. But I will tell you, there's no politician I have more affection for than Jerry.